Today, we're talking about interstitial cystitis. We have Dr. Mandy LaGreca on the show. And Mandy, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
What is your story? How did you get into helping people with interstitial cystitis?
That's really simple. I have it too.
Oh,
So the passion comes from within. I started with my symptoms at age 31. Although now that I look back, I realize I probably had some urinary issues even through college because I was always at the bathroom. I had urinary frequency, and they even nicknamed me the pisser
oh
when
my.
I was growing up and through college because I used to go to the bathroom a lot. So yeah, I probably started then, but then I was diagnosed officially at age 31 when my daughter was born. And if I can just describe the pain that comes with this, it's absolutely debilitating. I don't wish this upon my enemies. I can't even describe. It's like burning, sharp, painful urination, almost like glass was passing through, and I didn't have a UTI. So that's kind of how my journey started, just trying to navigate my own illness, going through all of the ups and downs of the Western medicine way of doing things. None of that stuff worked for me. And so I decided that it was time for something different. And that's when the journey just brought me here. I think everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. And obviously you didn't, have these symptoms and this condition and then just start helping people. In fact, on your website, there is, and I found this interesting, about Mandy page. So you go by Mandy, which to me is a very humble way to go when you have so many letters that are before and after your name. Can you tell our audience a little bit about your education and how you got all those letters, what they are before and after your name?
Sure. I'm a doctor in clinical nutrition. I have a doctorate from Maryland University of Integrative Health. So how all this started was I went back to college and I got a master's degree in biology, was a teacher. So I'm a natural born teacher. I love educating people. And that's kind of what I do in my practice anyway. And then as I started to go through my own healing journey, working with integrative practitioners, I got really interested in functional medicine. And so I decided to get my FDN. So I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, which is a type of a health coach. And then after that, I got my CCN, which is a certified clinical nutritionist. And I was really into it. And then I decided I'm just going to go ahead and sign up for the doctorate. And so I did. And I went through that program. And then after I sat for the CNS exam, certified nutrition specialist, allowed me to get a license. So that's what I am now. And I love what I do.
Yeah. Helping people's that's the reward, the hearing back from the people that you help. And I have a question coming up about that in just a little bit. We'll come back to that one. I looked up interstitial cystitis because honestly, I know very little bit about it. And really, for me, there's two ways to really help people when they have a condition. One is the completely blind approach, which is where I tend to go in and say, I don't know much about that. What I do know is how the human body works and kind of what it needs, and that most illnesses are really a set of symptoms from not having those things. So I can help you from that perspective. And then there's the complete medical approach where we really studied this condition and we know, what causes it and how to fix it. And then there's and I think this is you, which is in between those extremes, because you're not like me that knows so little bit about it, but you know a lot about it, and you probably know the medical and look at it from a natural perspective on the things that we could do to help. And it was interesting because the CDC website, cdc.gov, number one listing for interstitial cystitis, it suggests that medically very little is known about it. So
Idiopathic. Generally.
Idiopathic. Okay.
Generally. Yeah, but that's not true.
In your words, what is it?
It's inflammation. I mean, I know that's oversimplified, but ultimately, when you have pain, you have inflammation, right? Think about when you have pain, there's heat, there's redness. Generally, that's signs of inflammation. So how does it happen? That's where the idiopathic portion comes in medically, because they haven't really looked beyond medical reasons why. Generally in medicine, they're looking for pathogenic triggers, like infectious generally, or genetic. But in this case, because a lot of it is dietary and environmental, like toxicity, it's not something I believe, and I didn't go to medical school, like that type of medical school. So what they're learning, from what I know and what understand, they don't teach them too much nutrition or too much of things related to environmental, lifestyle, even mental, psychosomatic triggers. A lot of my clients have history of trauma, for example. A lot of that doesn't come up. But if you look a little deeper, there are a few medical doctors who have gone a little further. One of them, his name is Dr. Afren. He is very well known in the mast cell community. And so he has drawn the connection to IC and mast cell activation. And in fact, if you look at some of the urology published journals, they discuss the involvement of mast cells in IC pathogenesis. So there is something going on with the immune system. It is definitely immune mediated. It's an immune problem. But look around us. I think we're dealing with immune problems all around us anyway. So it's not abnormal to see these types of diseases arise. In fact, almost all autoimmune, autoinflammatory diseases are a dysfunction of your immune system. Can we agree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, whether that's gut related or most likely, I would imagine.
Well, that's 80% of our immune system, right? 70 to 80 resides in the GI tract.
Yeah. You mentioned some of the symptoms that you experienced. Were there earlier symptoms that you may have picked up on? And the reason I think this is important, the CDC site where I, read about it, let me see if I can find it really quick, because it was, the numbers were ridiculous. It was something like 1 in 100,000 people. It was believed that like 1 in 100,000 people have IC, interstitial cystitis, and that was updated to probably closer to 12% of women. Well, I
think it's higher than that. That's reported.
Yeah, definitely higher than 1 in 100,000. I know that because all the phone calls that I take where people ask me about this, they call and they wonder if Aloe Vera could help. We can talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
But it went from suggesting 1 in 100,000 from early numbers to literally up to 12%. And you think it might even be more. So
I do.
For those people that might be getting this, what would be some of the, before the intense pain, what are some of the early signs?
Urinary frequency.
Yeah. And is that, when you say that, does it mean lots of times in the day and are you peeing a lot? Are you more thirsty, or is it just?
No, it's urgency and frequency. So when you go, you got to go, almost like IBS. You know how IBS, when you got to go. And then like you can lose control at it. It's the same thing. You're running to the bathroom, leaking on yourself, and then also going often. So like, it's not normal for someone to have to use the bathroom every 15 minutes, for example.
Yeah. So when
you should be able to go hours between voiding.
Yeah. So almost like having a much smaller bladder with less control.
Yeah, but I don't think everyone has reduced bladder capacity. I mean, some will, because the inflammation is run so deep, especially if you've had it for a long time. There is scar tissue and fibrosis that occurs in the bladder. That's absolutely certain. And as a result of that, the bladder does the capacity. They say the bladder shrinks. The bladder's not shrinking. You're just developing scar tissue and fibrotic tissue inside the bladder that's causing it to have less capacity. Mm-hmm. That never happened to me. I actually had full bladder capacity. What was happening with me was I was having a lot of retention. So I wasn't urinating everything all at once. So I had to use the bathroom more often because I wasn't releasing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And how was it medically diagnosed?
Hold on one second. Let me just make sure I get somebody off of here. Medically, it is diagnosed via a cystoscopy. Generally, I never did that though. I refused. But it's very invasive. So it's a very, so the way some doctors will do it is they'll go invasively and they'll do a cystoscopy, and every once in a while they'll even do a hydrodistension. Will they blow up the bladder with water, and it allows them to scope it better, but also somehow provides relief temporarily. Or you can go the way my doctor did, and he did it based off of just symptoms. So like a symptom questionnaire, I guess that's called diagnosis of exclusion. We exclude everything else. You have these symptoms, therefore you have IC.
Right.
The Those are the only ways right now. There's another test that some people will do, but I don't think they do it as much anymore. It's called the potassium sensitivity test, where they'll expose the bladder to potassium. And if it has a reaction and burns, then you're diagnosed. I never did that either. I didn't want to. Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems to be like almost like that, catch all. If you're not having, we can't figure exactly what it is. Therefore, it must be this. And it's a general inflammatory, okay.
But let me mention something. Interstitial cystitis is actually part of a larger syndrome called bladder pain syndrome, BPS. Sometimes you'll see it as painful bladder syndrome, PBS, in some journals. So BPS, PBS. I believe in parts of Europe, they've already separated IC from BPS as two separate diseases. Although the umbrella term is bladder pain syndrome, the IC is now being considered people who have a specific Hunner's lesion, Hunner's ulcers that show up on a cystoscopy, which is based off of a virus now, polyoma B, I think it's called, virus. Very small percentage of people have that, maybe 10%, 5-10%. And then BPS, but we still call it IC in this country because that's what we know it as. But like if I were to go truly by definition, I actually had bladder pain syndrome, and 90% of the people who are diagnosed have bladder pain syndrome. Just to understand, there are different subtypes, and there's that subtype with the Hunters that actually has to show up on that cystoscopy. So you can have a negative, clean cystoscopy and have none of the lesions and still be diagnosed because you still have the pain. Does that make sense?
It sure does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and the reason I wanted to talk to you about this today is because we do get a lot of phone calls, at the Aloe company, and some people want to know how to get help with this and help with that. When it comes to IC, I have very little to offer, and they want to know, does aloe vera help with interstitial cystitis? To which I say, scientifically, I'm completely unaware of anything connecting a benefit from aloe vera, drinking aloe vera with IC. Why don't you talk to, and I point them to ichealer.com, your website. Is that still the best source?
Yeah.
Okay. And I know, obviously, you've trial and error figured some things out. How is it treated medically, and what would you do in addition to or instead of what medicine has to offer?
So from what I've learned from a lot of the people I've worked with medically, the first line that people are treating it with is with a couple of drugs. One is amitriptyline, which it's used as an antidepressant, but it does help desensitize the pain. I've actually just learned that it's also a mast cell stabilizer. So maybe that's another mechanism of action, but I don't think that's why it's prescribed. I think it's prescribed because it does reduce the pain. So that's has a lot of side effects. So that was one that I tried. I did try that, and I started gaining weight, and I'm like, nope, not for me. So I didn't do that one. The one they used to do a lot more until the FDA released some issues with class action lawsuits related to problems with the eye was Almiron. You might have run into that in your research. Okay, that's supposed to coat the lining of the bladder. But the problem is that's assuming that there's a problem with the lining of the bladder. So my understanding was it doesn't really work like that. So a lot of people said they went on Almiron and they didn't have a lot of improvements from that. Right. Side effect, hair loss. That's why I didn't do that one.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not just the appearance, but if my hair is falling out, what else is happening to my body? I'm glad you're bringing up the side effects because, sometimes we think, oh, I have this, I'm supposed to take that and everything's good. No, every medicine, I look at it like this. If medicine's going to get someone sick that's well, then, it must make your health better, right? So if we give it to a healthy person, they'll probably get even more healthy, right? No, if you give medicine to a completely perfect, healthy person, they become less healthy. It doesn't move us in a direction of health. That doesn't mean it can't be beneficial and help our life, happiness, quality of life, right? Yes,
that's what we're always looking for is QL, right? We're always looking for that, and that's really ultimately the goal, which is why I'm mixed. When I am a believer of, I was on antibiotics a lot, myself. I did take a lot of antibiotics for this. At that time, we thought I had an embedded infection. So that's another root cause of IC is embedded infection. So listen, if you need an antibiotic, I mean, people ask me sometimes, I have a UTI, should I take an antibiotic? And I see this horrific advice they're getting on Facebook. That's why I call it Dr. Facebook. I'm like, Facebook's not your doctor. No, if you have an infection, take an antibiotic. I mean, at the end of the day, that's why they were developed. It's the overuse that we have to be careful of. So I think the pendulum, when medications came to this world, they saved lives. Right. They absolutely did. When penicillin was invented, it saved lives. The problem is the pendulum swung in the other way. We started overprescribing. But I think we're starting to bring that pendulum back down. I think people are starting to become aware, and we're coming back to center, because ultimately nature does have its own healing, like aloe vera. It's part of nature. It's been around before medications. How can we harness that? And that's kind of where our job is as clinical nutritionists, is to figure out, I'm integrative. So I believe, how can we have a balance between medications and harnessing nature? Because nature is not available at everyone's fingertips. I mean, with your aloe, you'd have to buy it. If you didn't exist, we'd have to go get our own and have to learn how to fillet it. I'm sure people would do that, but we're thankful for people like you to have these kind of products.
Thank you. Yeah, I almost look at it, medicine kind of like, I enjoy eating, and I love eating ice cream. Now, I haven't had ice cream probably in at least a year. But if I ate it as much as I wanted, although I had enjoyed it at the time, overall, things for me would change. I'd probably gain weight and eventually have less health. And medicine can be used at certain times for a limited benefit, but if we rely on them, they take away from who we are. So
we are one of nature, and ultimately, your biochemistry is really everything, your own biochemistry, which is why I love what I do, because I can peek in your biochemistry with labs. I can peek in running a nutrigenomic panel, looking at your genetics to see what your predispositions are. So that's the beauty of, clinical and functional nutrition, is the ability to do that. Back to aloe, however, I discovered this. Interesting. Aloe was being used because Desert Harvest has an aloe vera product for IC. They specifically market it for IC. I tried theirs. I didn't really see a ton of benefit at the time. Maybe I wasn't taking enough. I don't know. It's freeze dried. But then I encountered your product because I was listening to Chris. He has that Chris Beat Cancer. I think you had an interview with him. I don't remember his full name. Chris Beat Cancer.
Chris Wark actually interviewed me at one point. So I'm on there's a aloe vera video on the chrisbeatcancer.com website.
Okay, that must have been where I ran into him. And I was amazed by what he was telling the audience about acemannan and aloe vera and his cancer. And so I started doing the research. I went to PubMed and I was like, oh my God, there's a plethora of information about this. It's not just aloe vera, it's not just acemannan, it's all the polysaccharides that are in aloe. So when I think about aloe, I don't think about it as the way Desert Harvest advertises it, as it's coating the bladder. No, I look a little deeper as what are the mechanisms of action of the polysaccharides and the acemannan on your immune system? Because ultimately this is an immune dysfunction. Its inflammation does involve the immune system. There's a trigger for inflammation. You're not just going to have inflammation just because you have it. Inflammation occurs because the cells of your immune system, we know the monocytes, the macrophages, the eosinophils, the natural killer cells, mast cells, and then your adaptive, that's innate, and then your adaptive immune system, your T cells and your B cells are responding to something. They're not going to respond to nothing. There has to be something. Well, if you think about it, the majority of the things that they respond to are probably pathogens. There's bacteria, viruses, fungi. Mold is a big one. It could be toxicity, toxins. It could be glyphosate. It could be pesticides. Stress can trigger your immune system. The polysaccharides and the acemannan in aloe vera specifically modulate your immune system. And I know you can talk more on this. So I look at it as how do the things that I recommend people help actually upstream, not downstream. Medication is downstream. We're upstream.
Right. I like that.
Yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit then, now that we're talking about the immune system, about, what you know about aloe and the immune system?
Yeah, I found out actual real research on this scientific. In fact, in a lot of our customers actually come because they're using aloe vera either as a replacement to or alongside their medical cancer treatments, which is a big immune system problem. And I realized that even chemotherapy companies have used aloe vera in research alongside chemotherapy. Now, one of my favorite ones is 240 patients, all stage 4, that were given only 1 ounce of aloe vera per day with their chemotherapy. Actually, it was 119 were given the aloe vera.
What does that come out to? A quarter? Yeah, that's not even a quarter cup.
Well, yeah, 1 ounce is, it's because there's 8 ounces in a cup. So it's an eighth of a cup.
Yeah, eighth of a cup.
And 119 given the 1 ounce and 121 just given the chemotherapy. And they put them into 4 categories, like, no improvement, mild improvement, more improvement. And then the 4th category was the what they called a complete result. And out of the 119, with the aloe vera, 10 of them were given the complete result category, but the ones that didn't get the aloe, only 3. So it was more than 3 times in the complete result compared to, so obviously something's happening. And they researched the ace mannan and realized that the primary sugar molecule is mannose, which seems to interfere with the cancer cell ability to consume and metabolize glucose, which is what feeds them. So there's so many possible pathways to how does aloe vera help the immune system. It makes the gut healthier, which is where the immune system is. Hippocrates Health Institute realized giving small amounts with supplements. They tested the blood for the supplements and realized the nutrients that they tested were higher in every single person that got the aloe vera with their supplements. So somehow it affects absorption.
Yeah, helps carry it in. I did notice that.
So having more nutrients probably helps your body work more like it's supposed to, and probably supports the immune system better. Somehow it lowers and stabilizes blood sugar levels in people that have diabetes. There's all kinds of mechanisms, potential ways, pathways. It increases your tumor necrosis factor, interferon, and interleukins, which helps wake up the immune system to where the viruses and cancer cells are. When the cancer cells have that mannose molecule attached onto them, they can't consume it, they can't let go of it. Apparently it's a signal saying that I'm a cell that you have to deal with, and the macrophages come and eat them. There's lots of neat possible pathways that it might help someone that doesn't have their full health. You have, and I know it's not all about aloe vera, and I don't even know if you mentioned in the course, but you have an online course for people that have interstitial cystitis. What can you tell me about that?
So I put together this course because I realized that learning about this, to take charge of your health, you got to understand why you have what you have. I mean, come on. At the end of the day, if someone just tells you just take this and you don't know why you're taking it, you're not going to be motivated to continue. So I was like, let me create this course. And so I went through everything I learned in my academics, and I kind of try to summarize it, even though it's 10 hours of lecture time, into this module that goes through all the different possible root causes. And I go through the gut, I go through the I talk about inflammation, I talk about the immune system, a little crash course, the gut, stress and how it impacts the immune system, detoxification, and really just helping people understand what's going on inside of your body. And actually, let me show you. I have this this chart that I made. Oh, if I could just share screens real quick here. You have to give me that permission to share screens.
Oh boy, you're gonna make me figure something out here. Hang on a second. I don't know how to do it. I got an idea. Is it possible that we can make it an attachment or a link that we click on?
Yeah, sure. No problem.
That in the description?
Yeah, it's just the 8 known root causes of IC. I wanted to, half of the battle with doing what I do, this is a very complex thing. IC is complex, diseases are complex, and communicating it to people in a manner where they can digest it, no pun intended, where they can digest it is complicated because they don't have a background in medicine. If they don't have a background in any of the stuff that we know, it's going to be foreign to them. And you can't expect them to open up a PubMed journal and be able to synthesize everything. You can't expect that. So I wanted to make this really simple. So I made this diagram of the 8 causes of IC. And so I kind of narrowed it down to inflammation, gut imbalances, trauma, big one, infections, genetics, toxins, food intolerances, and nutrient deficiencies. So those are like the 8. And through that's the course kind of walks you through all those causes. Right. It's long. I mean, but the people who've actually spent the time to go through it and synthesize it have gotten the most benefit because they were able to take the information and apply it to their own issues, because no 2 people are the same. And that's where sometimes it can get frustrating when people are used to the Western mindset where they're like, tell me what's wrong with me and tell me what to do. And my answer is, I don't know much about you. Like, I have to figure out what's going on with you. Just because you have bladder pain doesn't mean that you're going to be similar to the other person with bladder pain or that person with bladder pain. The reasons are all different, even though the symptoms are similar. But even amongst the symptoms, there's a wide range of variation in the symptoms. Not everyone has, for example, urethral pain. I had mostly urethral, but some women have just pelvic pain or just bladder pain. And it does affect men, by the way. I want to mention that. Men are affected. I've had a handful of men come to me with this issue. Generally, they have more also prostate related issues along with the IC, but men are also afflicted.
Well, all right. So, and I like that. And for the listeners, I'm a chiropractor, and before becoming a chiropractor, I had an 8-month-long, barely able to walk problem from my low back while I was in college. And I kind of figured out on my own how to help it in the course of about 2 weeks towards the end of that 8 months, which is what pushed me to be a chiropractor. I said, man, I got to help other people with this. And I became a darn good chiropractor, especially helping people with low back pain. Mandy, Dr. LaGreca, she went through this, experienced it, studied it, and in her course is presenting the likely causes and action steps that you can take to correct those. I like going through those things with people. And a lot of times it's like, which one of those do you think you're not doing? Or which one of those areas do you think needs improvement? And from what you told me, it sounds like everyone's different. So as they're going through this, there's probably going to be some areas that stand out in their minds as they're listening, following the course, and say, this is what I have to really focus on, and I can make improvements here. So I like that. I like the way you did that.
I think generally, though, I could say everyone has something with the immune system for sure, is definitely dysfunction. Why? That's individual. And what's like, it's kind of like a, teeter-totter, which one's heavier than the other. Like for me personally, my gut was almost everything, because even when I look at the symptoms of mast cell activation syndrome, which generally most people with IC have some level of this, and I see all the symptoms associated with it, you would think mast cells would mean allergies, like, anaphylaxis, eczema, itchy eyes, coughing, the typical. I had none of that. So you wouldn't have even classified me as mast cell, but there's a strong component of digestive imbalances related to mast cells, because mast cells, there's tons of mast cells in the digestive tract. In fact, mast cells are found anywhere that there's anytime that there's a barrier. So it separates the inside and the outside world. So your mouth, your nose, your gut, bladder, and vagina. So when I look back at some of those symptoms, I'm like, wow, the only ones I had were digestive and bladder related, but that's okay. You can some have just localized pain, but then there's other people who have a variety of other symptoms as well as the bladder pain, such as eczema, acne, skin issues, hormonal imbalances, brain fog, fatigue, bloating, anything, any kind of pain in the body can also go along with this condition. It's not just bladder pain. Generally, the younger people have just bladder. The older people have other diseases along with it. So if you're like in your 20s and you have bladder pain, you're kind of early in the game. And I always tell my younger clients, I'm like, hey, you're early in this game. This is the best time to start healing because as you get older, you only add on to it and you just get worse and worse and worse. And then before you know it, you're in your 50s and you've got like 6 other diseases along with IC.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. Yeah,
that makes sense. Hopefully people aren't hearing this where they're at the, worst stage, but finding out early and taking charge now. I visited your website, ichealer.com, and there was a tab courses, and underneath it, we find this particular course. You have a new course coming out.
Yeah, I'm working right now. I just bought the domain, Aviva Immune. And what prompted me to do this is because of COVID, and all the viruses, and people are just starting to wonder, like, how can I protect myself? And you absolutely can. There's prevention, and there's also things you can do nutritionally while you're sick. And there's also things you need to do after the illness, because this virus, I think the flu does the same thing. It comes with a lot of inflammation. So there's like 4 phases of the virus. There's prevention, there's illness, infection, there's inflammation, and then there's recovery. What I think I'm finding out is a lot of people will think that once their virus is gone, like, oh, I'm better. They think everything's better, but in reality, there's a whole nother area that you need to approach from an inflammatory perspective that happens on the tail end of the virus. So I wanted to educate people on these 4 different phases and nutritionally how they can support that. And so you can support it with things like aloe. That would be on my list. AHCC, vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, all the basic stuff. But also, if you haven't gotten sick yet, what can you do now to prevent? And a lot of that is geared towards reducing your whole body inflammation.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually just got over COVID. Had it in July of 2021. Woo. That was hard.
Yeah.
That was rough.
I had it too. I had it last month.
Okay. Probably about the same time. And, even now, having tested negative more than a month ago, there's probably still a little residual of, I want to clear my throat. And, it was, I'll say that was actually the worst illness that I've ever gone through, meaning I've never had a fever lasting more than 2 or 3 days, but this was a fever for more than a week. And,
oh, wow. You got hit hard.
Back pain and just no energy. I mean, to where you didn't even want to get out of bed to pee, Oh,
wow.
You did, but you didn't want to. And
I didn't have that experience.
There was no interest in hydrating or eating, none at all. I had to weigh myself daily to make sure I was staying hydrated because
did you lose your sense of smell?
For me, for whatever reason, I haven't had the sense of smell for years. But taste was definitely affected. And my wife had it alongside with me. And she, just after a month, I was making coffee and she said, I smell coffee. I said, you smell coffee? And then she realized, I smell coffee. It finally came back after the month. So that was an exciting moment for her. But
may I say something? If you lost your sense of smell, you might want to get your zinc levels tested.
Okay.
There's a correlation to zinc and loss of smell.
It's interesting because with COVID, I must admit, I've been taking zinc recently. When the symptoms start, I took them just a little bit here and there, and then I started taking it as I knew I was getting COVID symptoms, and through it all, and I started questioning myself: am I starting to smell again? So I appreciate that, and now I know to look into that connection and see if I have a zinc deficiency. That would be something.
Yeah, there's actually copper. People have oftentimes when there's zinc deficiency, they have high copper, and there's their antagonist. So sometimes if someone's concerned, we can actually run labs for that to see where the coppers are, unless zinc is. And oftentimes they're finding out that, and if you have zinc deficiency going into COVID, you're higher likelihood to lose your sense of smell while having it. And I have chronically low zinc as well. I think there's a genetic transporter issue with me because I take zinc and I'm still always low. So I did lose my sense of smell for about 2 weeks, but I didn't have the same experience with you, but I did follow this protocol that I'm going to be sharing nutritionally. I'm going to be sharing with this new course. And I followed it to the T. And I really, truly believe that's why, because Terry also got it and he got sick with me and he followed the protocol and we both had very minimal symptoms. I think we were sick for maybe 5 or 6 days. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to be able to share this with people.
Awesome. I love it. And when it was COVID, people, I'm going to say this only, everyone's been asking, and I'm not asking you to divulge this information. For me, I was not vaccinated. And I evaluated daily, did I make the right decision? Because I asked patients of mine that got COVID that weren't vaccinated, and some said they wish they had gotten the vaccine. Every day, regardless of how I felt, for me, I was glad that I did not, and I'm happy with the choice I made. It was never that bad. But at the same time, I recognize that it was bad enough that some of my friends probably would not have tolerated what I experienced.
Yeah, it's funny you bring this up because somebody asked me the other day, it was a friend of ours who's 85 years old, and he asked me, and I said it's a case by case situation with that. My opinion, my professional opinion is I think it's case by case.
And I agree with that.
with you with that.
Yeah. So just because, we're talking about this and saying, for me saying I wasn't vaccinated, I went through it and it was hard. For me, I'm super glad to have natural immunity, which I believe is going to be a lot stronger and longer lasting than anything medically that I could have had done, which isn't a guarantee either. That was part of it too, because we believe that we caught it from someone at a party that was fully vaccinated who came up down with their symptoms, a day or two before us. So kind of interesting how that happens. It's not a guarantee that we would not have gotten it.
No, but was the flu vaccine ever?
Yeah.
What was the flu vaccine ever? That's the question I ask people, because people always ask me this. And I mean, I think I have my professional opinion, but I think everyone has the ability to make a decision for themselves. But my question back to everyone is, well, when you got the flu vaccine and you got flu, did you ever question the efficacy of that?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the virus is going to do what it's going to do, and it's going to mutate and it's going to create variants. And then we have no control over that.
Yeah.
But if you're 85 years old and you could die from the flu, then if the vaccine reduces the severity of it for you,
right,
then that's the right decision for you. And that's why I think everyone should take a look case by case, and also look at your health history, because your health history and age is a big factor. I mean, children, by nature of being children, have higher innate immune system. Their innate immune system is stronger. As you age, your innate immune system starts to decline and your adaptive immune system starts to get stronger. That term is called immunosenescence. It's a phenomenon. So as you're older, you are going to be more prone to infections.
Yeah. All my kids in the same house did not get it, or they've already had it, but their symptoms were so low we couldn't tell. We don't know.
Test their antibodies, you'll know for sure.
Yeah. So I don't, and whether you vaccinate or not, we're getting on a whole different subject, whether you vaccinate or not, get to your ideal weight. If you have blood sugar levels that are up here and you're 200 pounds overweight, work on both of those, and your high blood pressure and stuff. Okay. Just getting to the right weight can so increase your
well, that is always the first line. That is always the first line. The first line is always, we always talk about like weight and height. Make sure you're at the right weight for your height. If you're not, get there first. And then everything else comes after that, because a lot of times your problems get better just when you lose weight, because fat is pro-inflammatory. Just having fat on your body is pro-inflammatory. But even when it comes to inflammation, you can be at, like a lot of the clients I work with are actually underweight. Well, that's the opposite problem, because they're underweight because they're not absorbing their nutrients and they're not assimilating what they're eating correctly, because they have digestive, insufficiency.
Yeah.
So it's just as bad to be underweight as it is to be overweight in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've never really thought about that, because I've never had that problem myself. I always tend to struggle with I just love to eat and it gains.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
I could just look at cake and it comes right to my hips.
I love your website. You got a lot of information there. I didn't check. Do you, and because I know you do a lot on YouTube, do you have links to your other places where people can find you? I See Healer, is that the number one place to go, and then they're connected?
Yep. So my Instagram is right on the bottom. So if you scroll down on my homepage, there's my Instagram feed that comes right to my webpage. You can just go there, follow me on Instagram. I do a lot of rich content. I do a lot of reels. I also have a YouTube, the link should be there on the website as well, a YouTube. I'm not really on Twitter, not yet. And then I just got on TikTok, but I'm not a fan of it. I don't know. Everyone's like, you got to get on TikTok. I'm like, oh gosh, do I really have to?
Oh
So I
boy.
did, but I'm not really as active on there as I am Instagram. Instagram is my thing. So if you want to follow me, you want to get some rich content, I post at least 3 days a week on Instagram. I do posts, I do videos, and I do reels.
Yeah. Awesome. I want to thank you for who you are as a healer, your wealth of knowledge, taking time to share it with me and with our audience here at Haley Nutrition. And also thank you for your transparency on your website, ichealer.com. You go into your history and how you really got to this place. And, you open yourself up to the trials, the real trials that you went through. So that's bold. And just thank you. And thank you for being on my show.
Thank you so much. It was a very difficult journey, but I have to thank people like you for enlightening me on different ideas that I would have never encountered. So I think, one thing I really love about life is when one door opens, it opens other doors. You just have to be willing to open that first door.
Yeah.
And so that's where I feel like people like you have been very, very beneficial for my growth, my own personal growth. So, and I really love interviewing you. All the interviews that we've had, people have really benefited from them. And the people who bought the Aloe have really loved it. So thank you for continuing to have that available to us.
Oh, thank you so much. Until next time, blessings to you.
You too. Thank you so much.